As a little boy, well, I've always been fascinated with rocks. I can remember going to a museum when I was 6 years old and seeing a cut diamond and thinking it was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. I didn't understand the light and how it bounced in and bounced out. It started me collecting rocks and minerals, and I've been looking for gemstones ever since. I love collecting rocks. To me, especially crystals and gemstones are just a beautiful example of God's creation. Really, the whole process is very similar to how God works in our lives through the process of transformation. I'd be cutting stones, and Jeannie would walk into the room and ask, "Daddy, what are you doing? Can I help? Can I do it?" By the time they were in junior high, they were cutting gemstones. The stones they cut back then are some of the most precious treasures we have now. I'm Jim, and this is Jana Chatham. We've been married 37 years, and God has just blessed us marvelously through our lives.
We lived 20 years in Alaska, and life was so different there. It was a wonderful place to raise a family, but that's when we started seeing a difference in our girls. We started seeing their individuality. Julie was the go-getter, she was hard on herself, and Jenny was the adventurous, free spirit. During junior high, we started noticing a huge change in Jenny's life.
When Jeannie turned to a teenager, everything changed. Everything turned into chaos.
We didn't understand what was going on. We couldn't figure out what we had done wrong because we thought we were the perfect parents. As a child myself, I had an alcoholic father who abandoned us. My mother was psychotic. She burned me. She did horrible things. So when I became a mother, I was determined to do everything right. And then to have a daughter who turned her back on God, I got angry with God. She was gang raped when she got back into drugs. 4 a.m. phone calls from police that they had our daughter, that we thought she was somewhere else. She stole money. She stole some of our credit cards, having to face the reality of possibly pressing charges against your own child.
Eating disorders, pills, everything we would have never dreamed could happen was all of a sudden overwhelming us in our life. In fact, I was struggling with denial for many years, and that created problems between the two of us. We began to recognize that we were becoming polarized between ourselves in our marriage.
Then July 5th, 2004, we got another 4 a.m. phone call, and it was my mother, and she said Jenny's dead. And that's when everything just hit us in the gut. Even though it's been over 10 years, there doesn't go a day that I miss my daughter. Sometimes I play her answering machine just to hear her voice. During that time following Jenny's death, it became very dark for me. I became very suicidal because I let the darkness just overtake me. And that's when it was like God's still voice just touched me and said, turn on the light, turn to the light. And that's night I turned every light in the house on, the microwave light, the closet lights, the oven light, and just turned to the light, because God's light in me just started coming out. And from that point forward, life became different.
Grief is a crazy thing. C.S. Lewis made the statement, "I never knew that grief was so much like fear." And that's really what it was. It plunges you into an emotional state that you can't begin to describe. It's almost like learning a new language when you go through the period of grief or any adversity. You learn how to comfort as you've been comforted by God, which is what His Word says in 2 Corinthians. It's a learning process, and you can pass that on. God wants us to pass that on to those around us who are new.
After we scattered Jenny's ashes, we started moving toward each other. And we had already been close to God independently. But then through reliving her life in rebellious years, we started doing it as a couple. We had different people that came up to us, and one man who Jenny had led to Christ. We've started finding things that she had handwritten scriptures in her billfold. This gave us a new hope for seeing her again. We saw through others what we couldn't see. And that how God continues to bless us now through each other and by helping others. And that we would not have known the kind of language or pain to be able to comfort others, because God is the only one that could comfort us during those times.
And that's really what the gemstone process is like. God takes a broken and a wounded life, and through trials and tribulations, He shapes us into the gemstone He designed us to become, light into darkness, and in the lives of those around us who are still struggling through their tribulation and adversities, so they can become creatures of light as well. Jeannie wore 2 or 3 of the stones up to the day she died. We'll never get over the loss of Jeannie. It's on our minds every day, but we know that through her life, she lived a life that will bring light to others, turning something of brokenness into something of beauty